Like the unlimited freedom and the fact that there's always something to do. Working at Scrap as well as creative resources like Scrap, well, can be perceived as a Sisyphean effort, just like sweeping a landfill, because of course, like the mail companies, the mail never stops, Scrap never stops. But there is a direct environmental benefit as well as a human and artistic benefit to the community and the world abroad by working in organizations like this. So as opposed to an office job, which I fortunately never had to have, thanks to my associations with Scrap and other companies like it, I never have to feel like, even if on my roughest day, my worst day, or even the most hardest customer encounter, that it's always a net positive working with creative reuse centers.
And personally yourself with creative reuse, what was your pathway into that?
As I mentioned earlier, that was from dumpster diving in high school. My friends would raid the local neighborhoods in the nicer parts of towns, go through their dumpsters, and then build elaborate sculptures and art, or in the tradition of the Merry Art Pranksters movement in the 70s. We call ourselves they were the Merry Pranksters in the 70s, so we call ourselves the Merry Art Pranksters. And we would indiscreetly leave our sculptures and our artwork around town on community centers, hostels, popular grocery stores, and main streets for the unwitting or unwilling populace to have to spectate.
And how do these activities, particularly reuse activities, how does that make you feel?
Good, satisfied, like I said. In these societies, there are so many activities and so many avenues that we all globally abroad have no choice but to participate in, at least in a creative reuse center that is involved with environmental protection and landfill prevention. There is the undeniable satisfaction of doing a good deed without having to ever have any religious involvement.
So can you tell us a little bit about that reducing of waste that happens through here?
Well, again, often when I was growing up, and as many were too, of course, there were lots of catchy jingles. I believe probably introduced mostly in the late 70s, but the recycle, reduce, reuse, and close the loop. It's very easy, of course, to put the onus of environmental stewardship and protection on individuals in our societies, when it, of course, is otherwise maybe largely attributed to larger organizations and corporations. But because of that, most people just focus on the recycle. And as we've learned in recent years, thanks to our involvement with the Environmental Department of Works, as well as the, waste handling companies in the city, and training that we've had from these organizations, it's been a real eye-opener to learn, of course, that putting it in the blue bin is never the end of the solution and is often just the beginning of problems. Many things, even when put in there rightfully or cleaned out, cannot be recycled down the line or contribute to delinquencies in the recycling process due to contaminations intended or unintended by those contributing to blue bins. Lots of things just cannot be recycled. Lots of stuff is going to end up in the dump, of course, regardless. But any amount that can be diverted from it, of course, helps prevent greenhouse gas forming, as well as contributing to the erosion of topsoil in our communities abroad, and of course contributing to the air pollution and the sometimes unpleasant smells associated with those organizations.
And can you tell us a little about the governance at Scrap? How is it operated?
Yep. Scrap is operated by a 501c3 board of directors. Our supervisor is the go-between between our board of directors. He's working in the office usually about 4 to 5 days a week, and unfortunately they're not here today to introduce you guys. We do have one of those in the office. We have an outreach coordinator in the office. We have a volunteer coordinator in the office, as well as pricing and material evaluations in the office. We also have, of course, an outreach driver and a pickup driver. If individuals cannot bring it themselves or corporations request that we can send someone else to retrieve it for them. On that basis, though, the rules are set. Materials that we can and cannot accept, materials that we may have too much of this time and may need to, unfortunately, refrain from taking this time. That's all listed publicly online and in person for the community and the public to know about. Other than that, as we mentioned before, a subsidized grant helps pay for staffers like myself and consultants like myself, of which there's usually about a rotating group of about 4 or 5 people on any given day, plumbing the aisles, organizing, reorganizing, stratifying and codifying all the various materials that come through our doors. And as mentioned before, that in itself is its own form of study, whether it's consulting with the customers or the donor themselves, learning about the diverse and weird backgrounds of materials and just what exactly that funny looking thing is with the weird dingle bopper on the end is, and how useful those materials might be and how valuable those materials might be. But really, it's like I mentioned, it all comes from dumpster diving. I've never stalked anyone in my life, but it's easy to consider that working at Scrap, you're stalking the lives of countless living and dead folks just by seeing the wonderful and oftentimes tragic memories of those individuals brought through the store. While I do consider myself an artist and a creative individual with a focus on mask making, sculpture making, costume making, at heart, my raison d'etre is definitely still stories. And scrap, there is no shortage of stories.
And do you have any idea offhand how much is saved from landfill? Have you got the
On
volume?
a yearly basis, we're usually diverting about 3 million pounds. I know the numbers have probably gone down a little bit over the last 2 years due to COVID restrictions and corporations not being able to donate as often, but at least while I was here, that was always the average.
And from a social and emotional well-being perspective, what do you get out of being here?
Oh, the satisfaction of a job well done, and of course, and all expense paid, access to, of course, all the dull parts I need.